Now we can teach Christian morality, but you teach it to Christians. And in order to become a Christian, you have to be in Christ. And we're getting sidetracked today. I want to know if a person is in Christ or not. And so he came in to the ark, and we come in to the ark of Christ. Now, I said about Noah finding grace in the eyes of the Lord. It didn't mean that he was out one day and stumbled on it. It did not mean that he had it and lost it and found it again. But when it says he found grace in the eyes of the Lord, it means that God, in some way, had always beheld Noah. Now here we're getting into the deep mysteries. That God had always beheld Noah in the eyes of the Lord, you see. He found grace. It come to a time in his life when he discovered it, yes. But it was always there. How do we know it was always there? Well, he said to Jeremiah, before you were in the womb, I knew you. He says in Ephesians that God has loved us from before the foundation of the world. Of Jesus Christ, Peter said he was slain from before the foundation of the world. He said, what's that mean? Came at a certain time. But it was always there in the mind of God. And this is what astounds me. And this is, I can't go any further with this, because I simply don't know how to proceed, that somehow everybody who has discovered the grace of God has been in the mind of God from all eternity. How does it work out in our life? Well, I'll tell you something. When you see grace against the backdrop of not somebody else's sin, but your sin, when you see grace against the backdrop of sure and certain judgment apart from it, when you see and feel and appreciate and enter into the grace of God in Jesus Christ, it can't help but do something, and that is to work itself out in your life. The more that we see our desperate need of God's grace and His wonder in giving it, the more eager we are to be gracious to others. Take harboring grudges, for example. Perhaps some of you have nurtured bitterness or hatred to someone for a long time. It has been sometimes my privilege and my pain to hear people's stories. When you're a pastor, sometimes you get to do that. And some of these stories that people have gone through, particularly in the childhood, would break your heart. And it is very easy to harbor grudges. It's very easy to nurture bitterness and hatred. And people have said to me, I cannot forget and I cannot forgive. They'll say it's God's job, not mine. But don't you see, and maybe I've said this a time or two when I was with you, what you are being asked to forgive pales in comparison to what God has already forgiven you. The other neat thing about grace working out in your life is it's going to work out in ways you don't even see. Remember when Jesus said, whoever gives a cup of cold water in my name will no wise use his reward? The cup of cold water is remembered hundreds, maybe thousands of years later. Noah, when he acted and received upon and entered into that grace of God, acted in obedience, would you be here today if it wasn't for Noah? We wouldn't. The grace of God in your life I'm convinced of this. We all like to be remembered for some things. When people die, we remember all their good traits. But the grace of God in your life ripples down through generations, through generations, through generations. That's why one man, one woman's obedience to Christ, living in Christ, can turn a whole generation, can turn a whole family around. Because families go in courses like rivers run in channels. And the grace of God coming into one individual's life can have a profound effect on the next generation, and the generation, and the generation after that. What you do, you may think that your life is small and insignificant when you look at the great affairs of the world, but what you do in the grace of God, I tell you, is going to have a profound effect on your great-grandchildren if Christ cares. Marvelous, wonderful, undeserved grace of God. We need to enter into that more this day. We're going to close with hymn number 300.